All right, I'm going to try to make a quick video here on our DIY Kabuki Curtain Drop System that we made here at Cedarbrook Church for our Easter 2022 services. This whole system we put together by ourselves, and the whole thing came in around from start to finish, including all the materials, for a little under $275. So it was a very budget-friendly way to do this, and now we have the system so we can use it really whenever we want. But I will try and explain a little bit about the system and how we put it together, so that if you are interested in doing something similar at your church or your venue, and want to try to do a budget-friendly option, I'm just going to explain a little bit about how we did it, and if that's helpful for you, then that is great. So for our curtain drop system, we did a little bit more than just a straight curtain drop, because we wanted to symbolize the veil being torn for Easter. So we actually have a split down the middle as it falls. And so we did a couple unique things to make that happen that I'll explain as I go through the process, to where if you just want to do a straight curtain drop, there's a couple steps that you can skip over in order to do that. So the first thing that I will explain is where we got the fabric from was Fabric Wholesale Direct, which is an online place. It is a poplin fabric, which ended up being the perfect fabric to use. I had originally ordered a sheer fabric because I'd heard from a couple places that that would be good for a curtain drop, but when it arrived, it ended up being way more transparent than I anticipated and far too light to where it would have blown around too much when the AC turned on. So this poplin fabric ended up being perfect. It's not too heavy, but it's also heavy enough to where it hangs properly, and it's not transparent at all. But we were also able to project from behind on it, which was very helpful, and do some cool shadow things and different stuff with that. So one of the first unique things that we did in order to get it to split is, instead of one piece of fabric, we have it in two with the overlap here in the middle, and that would create that splitting effect as it falls. If you were just doing a straight drop system, you would just have one large piece of fabric going across. You wouldn't have to worry about the overlap at all. We ended up doing a foot overlap, or approximately a foot overlap, which ended up being right about perfect, because when on Good Friday the HVAC system turned on and the fabric started blowing around a little bit, if we would have had any less than that, it would have been noticeable, and you would have been able to see through the gap in between the curtains there in the middle. Now, the main way that this drop system works, it starts with just a pipe going all the way across the front of our stage. We ended up using a metal pipe, because we thought that it wouldn't bend as much as PVC or some other materials, but it turned out when we got this length that if we don't have the pipe properly supported, it will still bend quite a bit. So I think really any kind of lighter piping will work for this. We ended up going with that metal pipe for that reason. The main way that this drop system works is we have these nails actually stuck through. We found the perfect drill bit to drill through and stick the nails in to where the friction will keep them in. And then the fabric has these grommets on it that just stick on the nails. And then as the pipe rotates forward, it falls off. Those grommets just slide right off the nails, and the whole drop system falls. Now, another unique thing that we ended up doing to get that splitting effect that you would not need to do if you do a straight drop system is we ended up staggering the nails. So if you see here in the middle, these nails right now, the way that it's hanging, are pointed forward just a little bit. And as we begin to go across, they're pointing more and more backwards until we get to the end and it's pointed almost straight back. Now what this does is it allows the center to fall first, so that the end actually hangs on a little bit longer, and as it hangs on longer, it kind of creates that splitting effect in the middle. And this ended up working out pretty slick, as you can see from our service, that it actually did create a nice splitting effect in the middle. We definitely could have done more with it, even gone further with the nails, or had some string attached to the middle and had a couple people pulling from the edges to create more of a splitting effect. But after we had successfully done it a few times, we decided to just go the simple route, and we're good with how much splitting effect we were getting there. And like I said, if you're just doing a straight drop system, you would not need to do this. You would just line all the nails up pointed the same direction so they would all fall at the same time. The other really cool part about this system that worked really smoothly was our pulley system. Now, because we had 4 services here for Easter, and we needed to get it reset in between each of them without much time in between, we decided to hook everything up on a pulley system. So each of these carabiners is attached to a rope that goes up to the ceiling and attaches to a pulley, which then goes along the ceiling to the back wall, where there's another pulley that comes down and then gets tied off at a point down here. So all you have to do to raise or lower it is unhook the rope from here. Like right now, we would attach the curtain. We would then use the pulleys, have 3 people, 1 on each point, and pull the curtain all the way up to height and then tie it off again, and it's ready to go. And this ended up working really slick because in between when people actually leave the auditorium after the service is done and when people want to start coming in for the next service, we only have a couple minutes. So we were able to basically get the curtain up in probably 3 or 4 minutes in between services, which worked really slick. Once the curtain is up, then we had the fortunate setup of having this mezzanine room which goes right up alongside our stage up top there. So along this far end, we extended the pipe out so that it would actually go along the wall, and someone in the mezzanine could actually reach up there and pull the pin out. Now, I'm aware that most churches and most venues are not going to have a setup like this, so you will have to probably have a pin on a string or a rope to pull out. The one thing that I would just recommend if you are doing that is to make sure that your piping and your carabiner system don't create as much friction as ours does, because our system actually, when you pull the pin out, it doesn't go anywhere right away because there's enough friction between our pipe and the carabiner to where the pin was really more just a safety system. We only had it fall accidentally once while we were rehearsing. When we left it up there without a pin in for about 20 minutes or so, it finally fell. So if you do need another system, because most places are not going to be set up where you can just manually turn it, you will just need to make sure that there's less friction between your piping. So maybe a PVC pipe or a larger carabiner will help to create less friction so that it can turn right away and fall down once the pin is pulled out. Now for the pin, we actually ended up keeping our temporary pin. When we figured out that we would actually need a pin after it fell that one time in rehearsal, I ended up just sticking this mic clip in as a temporary solution, and it ended up working so well that we ended up just going with it for the services. So we just wedged this mic clip in between the carabiner and the brackets here so that it would allow it to not twist forward at all until it was pulled. And then once we were ready at that point in the service, the person who's up in the mezzanine would simply pull the pin out, and then for safety, they would just keep their hand on it to make sure that it wouldn't accidentally turn until it got to the right moment in the service. And then, as I will show you here, as I begin to rotate my hand forward, it drops from the center first and then the outside. And that actually ended up dropping really well at each and every service. As you can see a little bit, it creates that splitting effect down the middle. Obviously there would be more if we would have dropped it from its full height. But the other thing that I was really impressed with was the way that it dropped really straight. It ended up falling in between that gap of the stage and the speakers at pretty much every service. There's only about one service where it ended up falling onto the speaker a little bit, but we had a pastor planted down front who is ready to move it just in case that happened. So yeah, that whole system ended up working really smoothly, and I'm really happy with the way that this whole system turned out. Like I said, we got everything locally from Fleet Farm except for the curtain was the only thing that we ended up ordering from an online source, and the whole thing ended up coming in for a little under $275. So for putting this whole system together, I think that we did pretty well with that, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So if you were thinking of trying to do something similar, I know when I was trying to do some research online to find how other people had done DIY Kabuki drop systems, I was not able to find a whole lot of information. So I just thought that I'd make this video in case it helps anyone out if you're trying to look up information on how to do that at your church or your venue. If you do have any comments or questions on how to do this, I'd be happy to answer those. You can either comment or send me a message, and I will try and get back to you and answer the questions as quickly as possible. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that this helps. Thanks.